looking at some key differences for the 2020 versus the 2022 model year. Typical Ford fashion, we do have some colors that were removed, some colors that were added in as well. Now, one thing that's kind of unfortunate, the 3-liter turbo diesel engine. If you were a fan of a diesel engine, unfortunately, you're not going to find it in the F150 lineup for 2022. Ford did choose to scrap that one. So if you're after a diesel, you're going to have to go minimum F250 all the way up to that 5 or 650, just depending on what you need. Now, a few other things, the one thing that I'm probably the most excited about is that in 21, Ford decided to get rid of the special edition package as well as the black appearance package. But in 2022, they brought the black appearance package back, which is so amazing. Like, why they got rid of it in the first place, I'll never understand. Like, maybe it was just like a commodity constraint, but the black on black look that is available, absolutely beautiful as always. So kudos to you, Ford, for bringing that back for this model year. Now, obviously this specific one doesn't have it. This is the Lariat trim level of the vehicle. So Lariat is the 502A specifically for this one. So we've got a few different packages that are available for every trim, from the XL all the way up to the fully loaded, limited, and platinum trim levels. So which one you go with is going to depend on your budget and what features you find important out of a vehicle. So like I said, 502A version of the Lariat, but when we look at the actual tires themselves, we've got a series of different choices that are available for the vehicle. It's going to depend on which trim level of the vehicle you've got. So we're going to have a minimum 17-inch tire. We've got an 18-inch option, a 20-inch option, and then up to a 22. Now it's ultimately going to depend on which trim level you're in, because we get into the limited version, we've got the option for that 22, but inside of the Lariat, the max we can go is the 20-inch. And that's the same for the more popular F-150 lineup, the XLT. This specific one is the Lariat trim level, and it's the 502A specifically. Now, a few things, this one has the chrome appearance package, which is why we've got chrome all around the outside of the body. So we've got it for the bumper in the front, a little bit in the back, right along the grille there as well. We've got some highlights. So we've got some highlights on the side view mirrors there, and even the running boards. So they will have that chrome appearance look when we get that chrome package. And that's regardless of whether we look at the XLT, the Lariat, etc. But one of the nice things is that we do, if you're not a fan of chrome, we do have the option of going for something called the XLT Sport Package or the Lariat Sport Pack. And what that's going to do is give us body color paint instead. But there's a little bit of a caveat to that because it's not available across the entire vehicle lineup for colors. Certain colors you do need to be in. So specifically, like if you want black, you can get that Lariat Sport Pack, the XLT Sport Pack as well. Certain blues, specifically the darker blue, you unfortunately can't get the Sport Pack in that whatsoever. So if you want to have that body color paint instead, you'll have to be very careful with which way you select and what options you go with when you order your truck. And that's one of the great things, because we're just getting into the 2022 model year right now as well, which exciting news, you can put in a factory order now. You're probably a couple months away depending on how you have it configured. Now, one of the great things about the 22 F-150 is that Ford did introduce the auto start stop delete option as well, which I think is absolutely amazing. But the reason they did it is because there was that chip shortage. So, I mean, here nor there, at the end of the day, they ended up figuring out a way that they can kind of use that chip shortage to their advantage and give people what they want, because we've got the flexibility of getting that start stop delete in some versions of the vehicle, and it's the same way with the Ford Explorer and a few others. So I'm super excited that we've got that option where you can get that deleted right from the factory. So if it drives you nuts, you don't have to worry about constantly pressing that button. We now have the flexibility to be able to delete it right from the factory instead. Now, as we move to the front of the vehicle, this specific one has the Lariat Chrome Appearance Package, which is why we've got the grille set up in the look the way that it is. We do technically have the option for a number of different grilles depending on which trim level of the vehicle we've got and which packages we have available as well. Like we get into that beautiful Lariat Black Appearance Package and it looks incredible. But I'm not saying this doesn't look nice. The chrome grille there looks great and it contrasts very, very nicely with that chrome bumper. Stretch all the way across the side. We've got another lip right along the bottom there as well, just above our tow hook. So we've got 2 chrome tow hooks in the front there as well. Depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in, you may or you may not have fog lamps, and then you're going to have a different setup for these actual headlamps, again, depending on the trim. So we do have a few different engine choices that are available. The base engine that we're going to get inside of our truck is going to depend on which type of vehicle you've got. So how you have it configured, which trim level, etc. Now, inside of the XL and the XLT, that's going to be the base 3.3 liter V6. This is the Lariat, which means that as a default, we're at least going to have the 2.7 liter EcoBoost with the optional 5 liter V8, depending on which trim we've got and how we have the rest of the truck configured. But power-wise, it's literally all across the board here. Like the 3.3 liter V6, so that base engine, is going to be able to push out 290 horsepower and 265 pound-feet of torque. While this beauty, the 2.7 liter EcoBoost, is going to be able to push out 325 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. The diesel engine, unfortunately, is no longer available inside of the F150 lineup as of the 2022 model year. So whether it was just because of a lack of sales, lack of availability, whatever the case may be, that engine is scrapped. So if you do want a diesel engine inside of a Ford truck, you're going for at least the F250 if you want that to happen. Taking a peek at our driver's side door. So we do have a series of different buttons along the side there, and that is going to be standard on some trim levels of the vehicle, 5-digit factory number, and we do have the option of being able to set up our own unique number there as well. So we can either do that on the outside, we can do it from the inside. One of the cool things is that we can also double press these buttons in order to be able to lock the door there as well. So you literally press the bottom two, and that's literally going to lock the door. We can also lock the door by pressing the button along the side there. And we've got intelligent access, so we can slide our hand in order to be able to unlock. And that's one of the cool things. So we are in the Lariat version of the vehicle, so we do have our power side view mirrors, so power folding mirrors. So we go to lock the truck, and we're going to open it up, and we just go to unlock the truck by sliding our hand in there, and then you can see it's now unlocked for us. But as we hop inside the vehicle here, so tons of different options that are available. Like firstly, look at the beauty of this door. Like I absolutely love this Baja interior. But looking at some of the basics, so along the door there, as you can see, series of different buttons there. We do have some seat memory buttons that are available, so 3 individual profiles, which that's great because we're in the Lariat, so that means that we can set up 3 individual ones, but it's going to remember not only our side view mirrors, but also our steering wheel setting, as well as the setting that we've got for our seats there. So we do have some flexibility as to what's actually showing up there. We can power fold our side view mirrors there if we wanted to. We can adjust what's going on with our side view mirrors and adjust our windows very simply. Moving down a little bit, as you can see, we've got a little storage area there. Down a bit more along the door, we do have some storage space there as well. Now, as we start to move inside, so we do have a series of different buttons that are available there. So, very first ones, so these ones are going to be for our zone lighting on the outside, so we can turn on the lights that are on our side view mirrors. We can lower our tailgate from the inside there as well. We can also turn on our bed lighting. We do have our selector switch to figure out what mode we're in there. Always just recommend keeping it on the auto mode. Fog lamp buttons on or off. Your truck may not have this depending on which trim level you're in. We can increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen. We do have an electronic parking brake there. We can just pull to turn it on. We hit the brake and then we push it in order to turn it off. And then we've got power adjustable pedals there. So we just might be able to make it out a tiny little bit so we can easily adjust the pedals, which is a nice thing. So it is available optionally in some trims, standard in others. And then just along the side there, we also do have our hood latch. So we're just going to give that a single pull in order to get into the hood. Now, taking a peek, steering wheel might be manual, might be a power process, depending on which trim level you're in. We're in the Lariat, which is why we've got that power steering wheel there instead. So it will remember if we hit our seat memory button, so it'll remember not only the steering wheel, it's also going to remember our side view mirrors, as well as our seat there as well. And that's actually a neat one because some trim levels of the vehicle, it's going to be a manual seat. Other ones are going to be power. So we can go forwards, backwards, up and down with it. We can go forwards, backwards with the actual rest itself. And then we've got our lumbar support. If yours was one of the more base trucks, or if you're in the XLT where it's not power, in the lower trims, we would have a bar along the side there as well in order to bring the seat forwards and backwards. Now, my first impressions of the truck, very similar to the 2021. Like, I love the look of this. I love the feel, the functionality. The comfort of this is so nice. Now, a few things to point out. Inside of some of the higher trims, we do have the option for that active motion seat, so massage chair seat. Unfortunately, the Lariat doesn't have that as an option. We've got our blind spot monitoring system, at least the reverse sensing system, and a number of other things. Now, there are some technology packages that we can get to get that forward sensing system as well, park assist, etc. So we do have some options there. Now, this is just going to be a basic walk around of the vehicle as well. So I'm going to go through some of the basics of the steering wheel, that cluster screen, as well as the media screen. But if you're looking for something more in depth, like you want to know how specific things work, like how the steering wheel and cluster screen work, how that media screen works, check down in the description below because I have put together a comprehensive video on those systems as well. But let's look at some of the basics here. So we've got our stick on the left-hand side there, which is going to be for our wipers. There's a button on the tip of the stick in order to be able to turn our wiper fluid on as well. Looking at the left-hand side of the steering wheel, this specific one does have the option for the adaptive cruise control system. So your set it and forget it cruise. That one is available optionally inside of some trim levels of the vehicle. It's available standard inside of some other ones. Our basic volume up and down, and we've got our voice command prompt. So inside of the base XL version of the vehicle, you're not going to have the voice command prompt that can do much for you. But inside of the higher trims, and when you get into some of the higher packages, we would have the option of changing the radio stations, making phone calls and things like that using our voice with that enhanced voice assistant. One of the nice things about that assistant as well, like I said, we can change radio stations, songs, we can navigate using our voice. If we were hooked up through Apple CarPlay, we could use that as our Siri assistant as well, which is definitely a nice thing. Now the pad on the right-hand side is going to let us figure out what's going on with the actual cluster screen. So we've got a beautiful screen there, and it is fully digital inside of the Lariat version and above. We've got a few different screen choices and options that are available depending on which version of the vehicle you're after, but I love the digital screen. This thing looks absolutely beautiful. So pad on the right is going to control what's going on that screen there. We can change between songs or radio stations. We can press and hold to be able to seek between different stations as well. And then we can also answer or hang up on a phone call. And that's going to be the basics of the actual steering wheel there. As we move over to the side, so because we're in the Lariat trim, we do have the Bang & Olufsen sound system. So we've got that nice B&O logo right along the very top. There's a few other highlights for it in the doors there, front and back. Now this is an 8-speaker system that's going to be standard with an optional 18-speaker system when we get that unleashed version of the B&O sound system. By looking at some basics, we've got our auto start-stop button, which, new for the 2022 model year, we could technically get rid of that in some vehicles when you do an order directly from the factory. We've got our camera there as well, which is going to flip us between a few different modes. So this one does have the package for the full 360 camera, so it gives a few different options there. I'm actually just going to start this thing up. So nice, so nice. A few things about it as we actually start it up here. So push button start in some of the trim levels. The lower, like the XL, is going to be just a regular key fob instead. So if you want that push button versus not, it's going to dictate which trim level of the vehicle you look at. But beautiful look here. Now, as we press that camera button, we've got a few different modes that we can go for as well. So we've got just our reverse camera. We've got the option of looking at our full 360. We've got a front partial view. We've got a front 180-degree view, so it's like a stitched-together view in that front. And then we've also got our bed cam. So definitely useful if you're backing the truck up and you want to see kind of what's going on behind you. Definitely a nice thing. Moving down, so this was actually changed around for the 2021 model year. That's specifically where the Pro Backup Assist as well as the integrated brake controller are located. So they kind of like switch positions of a few things. But we've got our Pro Trailer Backup Assist, which means that rather than counter steering the steering wheel, whichever way we want a trailer to go, we just twist this knob that direction as well, and it's automatically going to counter steer for us. So it's a beautiful system. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, you're going to love it. Like, absolutely love it. Down a little bit more, this specific one, trailer disconnected. I don't have a trailer hooked up, but we do have the option for the integrated brake controller there as well. And we've got our plus minus buttons to be able to control that. Moving down a little bit. Now this is the Lariat version of the F150, which means that we've got a mode called 4A, and that's our 4 auto mode. Obviously, if we were in the 4x2, we wouldn't have that as an option, but this is the 4x4. So at a minimum, in any 4x4 truck, we're at least going to have our 2 high, 4 high, and our 4 low. Inside of the Lariat and above, we're going to have our 4 auto mode. And that's literally going to switch us between different modes depending on what the vehicle recognizes it needs. So it's automatically going to flip us out as necessary. And that's extremely useful, specifically in wintertime driving. Now, if you want to know about the different 2 high, 4 high, low, etc., when you should be using them, check down in the description below as well for that walk-around video on how these modes work. Now on top of that, we also do have a selector switch for different drive modes. And the drive modes look really, really nice inside of this digital screen. So starting off at the basics, we've got our normal mode, we've got a slippery mode, there's also deep snow and sand, mud ruts, as well as our rock crawl. Now the rock crawl is specifically because we've got the FX4 package. But as we shift out to the other side there, so we've go to the other side, all of a sudden we've got a tow haul mode, we've got an eco mode, and then my favorite, absolute favorite is the sport mode. Though each mode is going to do something different. Like when we're inside of those slippery modes, it's going to play with our traction and stability control, versus when we're in the sport mode, it's going to hold onto the RPMs a little bit longer, so let it go a little bit higher to give us a sportier performance. So which mode you are in is going to depend on what you're doing. But like I said, if you're rock crawling, you could be out into that far mode, so into the either mud ruts mode or into the rock crawl mode as well. It's going to put us into our 4 low mode when we're doing that, because that's really when you want to use 4 low. If you're doing aggressive rock crawling and things like that, you're pulling a boat out of water, etc., that's when that 4 low mode is going to be the most useful. But we've got a series of different modes that we can easily select directly through the screen, and they are great across the board. Now, as we start to move across the side there, so we do have a button which is going to reveal a little storage compartment there. One of the cool things is that inside of the Sync 4 media screen across the entire vehicle lineup, we've got wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So we could hook up, because we do have factory navigation inside of this thing, but if you wanted to rely on your phone instead, we could use Apple Maps, we could use Google Maps, and we can use Waze directly through this middle screen. But there are a ton of options, and there's a lot of flexibility when it comes down to the screen itself. So just kind of going through some of the basics, we've got some base audio settings. We've got AM, FM, Sirius XM. If we had a USB stick with MP3s, it's literally just plug and play. So we'd plug in, we could select what folder we're in, etc., in order to be able to select that. And we've got a few different options. So if we were connected over Bluetooth on our phone, we could use our phone's audio as well. We've got our base connection for the phone. We can have multiple phones connected. We can have user profiles connected there as well to remember your phone, your audio preferences, and things like that. We've got a navigation mode, which when we've got factory navigation with a few different options. So we've got our factory nav, which is super responsive here, which is a nice improvement from the 2020 F150, the Sync 3 media screen. It just looks nicer. It's just nicer all around. We've got a favorite button where we can literally create a button that will essentially do what we want it to do for the most part. Like we can have it come up for recent calls, for zone lighting, vehicle settings, and things like that. So we do have a little bit of options as to how we set that favorite button up. We've got a series of different drive settings there as well, which some of the basic ones that we're looking at, we've got a vehicle hotspot, which is great. It does require a data-only plan through some cell phone providers in order to be able to get that, but we could use the truck as a wireless hotspot for up to 10 devices. Now, one thing to point out, this version of the F150, we've got a remote start directly on the key fob. But even if you didn't have that, so if you're in the XLT version of the vehicle and even the base XL101 version, you would have the option for remote starting directly through your cell phone. So that is a nice thing because we could remote start from anywhere. Now, in the lower trims, if you didn't get it as an option on the XLT, we could look at an aftermarket solution as well. It wouldn't be integrated right into the key fob. We would have just like a secondary dongle that we could use, but remote start is available there as an option. We've got some great options for display, a series of different features for driver assistance. So because we've got the adaptive cruise, it's intelligent cruise there available as well. And the intelligent cruise takes the adaptive to the next level because it's based off of speed sign recognition and things like that. Like I said, if you want more of an in-depth look at this media screen, check down below for that walk around instead. We've got our blind spot system inside of the Lariat and above, which is always a nice thing. Our reverse brake assist, so as we're backing up, if there's an obstacle behind us that we don't see, it's going to slam on the brakes for us, which is definitely a nice thing. And a series of other great features. Now, as we start to move down, we do have a power folding shifter, which is great. Now, this specific one doesn't have the work surface area, so the interior work surface area. It is available optionally. Now, I wish that Ford would include that as a default across the entire F-150 lineup, because I think that interior work surface area is absolutely brilliant. Like, why someone didn't come up with that before is beyond me, but it's here now. One of the cool things about that work surface area is that if it had it, so we've got the option of lifting this part up, but if it was down, we would have a button along the back there where we could literally fold this over instead. So we could literally have an area to drop a laptop, things like that, in order to be able to work as we go. But we do have the option of kind of lifting this thing up and down as necessary. We've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then our manual mode. So when we're in the drive mode, we can shift out into manual. And just to the left-hand side of the shifter, we've got a plus and minus button, which gives us the option of either increasing or decreasing our gears. And that's one of the great things because across, I believe it's the entire vehicle lineup, like every engine choice, it's a 10-speed automatic transmission. So we can adjust what gear we're in easily as we're driving as well, if you want more of that manual control, because that's what you like. Now, a few other things to point out. We've got a little storage tray there, another little one along the side, and then we've got a few cup holders there as well. Now, because of the configuration that we've got in this one, we do have a console in the middle here. So we can get just the console by itself on certain paints. We can get the XLT Sport Appearance package, the Lariat Sport Appearance, etc., which would also give us this option. But it is nice to know it's standard in some trims, optional in others, but it gives us 5-seat configuration. So 3 in the back and then at least 2 in the front. So one of the cool things is that we do technically have the option for the bench seat in the middle there instead. So if you needed a 6-seater, you've got that option. The shifter would obviously move from here onto the wheel instead. So which way you go is going to depend on how many seats you need and what you like the look of. But when we get this option with this little armrest, well, I shouldn't say little, like this is actually kind of ridiculous. We've got a removable tray there. We've got a few more power points in there, so another USB and USB-C, and then a boatload of space down there as well. Like we do have an option for a console vault there if we want to do something aftermarket where we can literally kind of have a little vault inside of this thing as well, but it is fairly nice. And as we start to move up and we move forward, we do have an auto dimming rear view mirror. We've got our basic cabin control lights. Now, because this one does not have the sunroof, we don't have the buttons for it, but we would have that option, and it's a full panoramic sunroof to open up the entire part of the vehicle. Well, I shouldn't say open it up. It opens up so that you've got a beautiful look there, but it's the first half of the sunroof here that would open up there instead. So we can kind of tilt it if we want to create a little cross breeze. We can open it up there as well. Now this thing does have a power sliding rear window. So that power sliding window is available optional in some of the lower trim levels, and then it is standard in some packages as well. So I love that option if you need to store some lumber and things like that kind of in here. You want to create a nice cross breeze as you go as well. It's definitely there as an option. We do have our sunglasses holder up overhead. There is the home link system. So if we've got a garage door opener at home, we can easily program it in there. We do have a visor there. This one does have the vanity mirror with the lights, a little business card holder there, and then we can also extend this thing out to cover off that part of the window if we need to block some sun from hitting our eyes. Looking at different configuration choices for the truck, we do have 3 available choices. So this is the SuperCrew, which is the full 4-door version of the vehicle. So if you've got a slightly larger family, you've got a larger crew of people that are going to be with you all the time, would definitely recommend looking at the SuperCrew configuration. When we get into the Super Cab, that's when we get the 2 full doors and the 2 half doors. So these would be the half doors that swing the opposite way instead. And then we've got the regular cab, which would literally just be the 2 front doors there instead. We would have no back row whatsoever. But inside of the SuperCrew, like I said, a huge amount of space back here, which is definitely a nice thing. Like, I'm 6 feet tall, and look at this. Like literally a crazy amount of space back here. And that's before I fold the seats up, because that still is available as an option. So if we take a look just along the side there, we do have a little tab, we can pull that in order to fold the seat up. But this is kind of ridiculous how much space is back here. Now, a few things to point out along this side, this seat as well, same thing. We've got the option of being able to lift this one up. We do have a little storage tray along the side here underneath this main part of the seat, so the double bench. Off to the other side, there's a built-in power inverter. So there are tons of spaces and a lot of things that we can get back here, because one of the interesting things, we also do have the option for partition lockable storage. And taking a peek just along the passenger side, so that rear seat, so you can see there we've got a little tab. So if we pull that tab, that's going to lower that part of the seat down. It's just this one part that'll drop down. And as you can see there, we've got a latch right along the top. There is one along the other side there. And then we do have our jack as well as our spigot. So if we need to fill up using a jerry can, that's where we're going first. Now, looking at second row spacing inside of the vehicle. So like I said, this is the SuperCrew version. So we've got a ton of space back here. If you're needing something with a slightly longer box, you don't necessarily care about the back seat, you could look at the Super Cab, which would at least give you that 5-seat spacing there as well, with the optional 6, depending on which package we've got inside of this thing. This seat is set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall, and like I have a great amount of knee space, great amount of foot space, and up overhead, I've got about 4.5, almost 5 inches of headspace there as well, which is insane. Now, one thing to point out, this specific F-150 does not have the panoramic sunroof. So that is available as an option, but it would take away from a little bit of that headspace. So we'd lose about an inch, inch and a half roughly of headspace there. But like I said, it's still fairly spacious. And like if we had multiples of me's kind of side by side, be able to comfortably be able to sit inside of this thing as well. Now, this is the Lariat, and specifically the Baja interior, which the more I see this thing looks beautiful. Just the way that the stitching is, kind of that cross between that tan versus the black interior, I think it actually does look fairly sharp. We do have a series of different types of leather, interior, things like that, going to depend on which trim level of the vehicle that you look at. As I mentioned, this is the 502A version of the F-150, which means that, yeah, we're leather because we're the Lariat, but we also have heated second row seats, and that's specifically the outboard seat. So this driver passenger side, this middle seat is never going to be heated. So that's regardless of whatever trim level you've got, whether it's the Lariat or the fully loaded limited trim level as well, never gonna have a heated seat in this middle. I wish that would change, but not available there as of yet. Now, a few things to point out back here. We do have a few cup holders, which is always a nice thing. Up overhead here, we do have a power sliding rear window, which available in some trim levels of the vehicle standard, available optionally inside of other ones, and depending on which package choices you go with. Moving in front of us, behind the driver passenger seats, we do have a few pockets there so we can easily store some things. We've got some more cup holders back here. We've got our seat warming buttons. There also is a 12-volt power point, so we can plug some things in if we need to. Moving down even more, we've got two USB ports, so a USB as well as our USB-C. And then there's also a 400-watt power point back here as well. So we did have one in the bed of the truck, but we've got one just in behind the armrest. Now, outside of that, we do, because we're in the Lariat, have the Bang & Olufsen speaker system. That's an 8-speaker system as a default. We could upgrade it to the Unleashed version, which is 18-speaker, and it sounds so nice, but available optionally in the majority of the trim level lineup as well. We do have a little cubby there, so a little bit of storage, and it's actually multiple tiers of storage. Like we've got a little one here, a little one a bit further down, and even more down the door there as well. Our basic handle along the side, a hook along the top, and then we've also got a cabin control light up along the top there as well. But overall, I am very impressed with what Ford has done with the F-150, and there is a reason why this thing is the #1 selling truck in North America year over year. It's just people really appreciate what Ford does with these things. But looking at some more of the basics, but as I said, looking at the basic highlight trims here, I love the stitching and the feel of the actual door itself, and the color contrast look incredible. Like I said, this is the Baja interior. We do have the option for the ebony, which is probably the most popular interior inside of the Lariat, but it's going to be your call which one you go with. Like I said, the Baja is something a little bit more unique than what you're typically going to be able to find. Now, one of the great things is that we also do have some flexibility with these seats. As you saw earlier, we can easily fold these things up and they do lock into place. We've got our latch system, anchor, tethers, etc. So if you need to put some car seats in here, you could absolutely do it. Front facing, rear facing inside of the SuperCrew will not be a problem. The Super Cab, you're going to be a little bit tight if they have to be back facing. So if the seats are pushed up a little bit more, you might luck out and get a rear facing seat in there. But if you're going to have rear facing seats, you're probably going to need the SuperCrew instead, just to make sure that you've got more than enough space for the driver passenger. It's going to be up to you which way you go with though. Filling up on fuel in the F-150 lineup, straightforward all along our driver's side door. Now, it's non-lockable in most of the configurations. When you get the optional power boost engine, so that hybrid engine, this cap is actually going to be locked, and that's just to do with pressurization. So you would have to press a button just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel to open up the gas cap specifically for the power boost. But outside of that, super simple, capless system, insert your fuel hose, and you're good to go. Now, looking at fuel quality across the entire F-150 lineup, minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just regular gas, so 87 octane. You definitely don't need to use a higher quality fuel, but here's the kicker. Inside of the 5-liter V8 and the 3.5 liter, so whether that's the power boost or just the regular 3.5, I would absolutely recommend ideally an 89 or a 91 octane. It's going to give you even better performance. It's going to positively affect your horsepower and torque as well. Because when we look at the horsepower and torque across the entire vehicle lineup, that's achieved using a premium fuel. So do you need to use one? Absolutely not. But if you want better performance out of it, it would be a good idea to use a higher premium fuel, especially when the vehicle's under heavier load. So if you're going to be towing way more, you might want to look at that. If you're going to be doing aggressive off-road driving, racing, whatever the case may be, you're going to want to look at a higher premium fuel instead, but it's definitely not necessary. Now, we do have the option just for the hitch receiver by itself, where we've got a few different options for tow packages also. So inside of the 502A version of the vehicle, we've got Pro Backup Assist. We've got not only the hitch receiver, but our 4 7-pin wiring harnesses there as well, so we can easily power some things up if we need to. Now, there is also the option for the integrated brake controller, which will come standard in some trim levels, but it is available optionally across the board. So if your trailer demands that integrated braking, it is available there as a default. Now, looking at the actual towing capacity of the truck, that's going to vary widely depending on how you have this thing configured. Like if we're just doing base bumper towing, so if we've got that ball just on the top here instead, you're going to max it at 5,000 pound towing capacity. If we look at the 4x2 base engine with the smaller axle ratio, 5,000 pound maximum towing capacity, but we can go up to like 15,000 pounds inside of this truck depending on how the rest of the truck is configured. So if you're looking specifically on how to configure your truck for what you need towing wise, check down in the description below because I have put together a comprehensive video on how to properly select one based off of what you need. Let's say if you've got 1,000 pounds of stuff in the bed of the truck, that's going to take 1,000 pounds away from what you could tow. So something to think about. The actual bumper weight, so for the hitch weight inside of a trailer, that's going to take away from your overall payload capacity there as well. So you have to make sure you're really looking at what are your payload needs, what's your towing capacity need as well. Now, few things to think about when it comes down to the actual towing as well as the payload capacity. Every single option you add into the truck. So when we look at the SuperCrew, when we look at things like the 502A version of the vehicle, we throw in the sunroof and things like that. Every little component, everything you add on is going to subtract to your overall payload capacity. So if you really load this truck up, yeah, the maximum payload might be 1,900, 2,200, 2,800, whatever the case may be, but if you load it up, that payload is going to drop down just depending on how you have it configured. Like I said, everything is going to take away from your max payload, max towing, like even people inside of there. People, cargo, things like that, everything adds up. And that's one of the cool things because we do have our integrated scales that are available as an option inside of this truck as well. So we can figure out exactly what our payload is inside of the bed of the truck. So I think it's beautiful that Ford's introduced that, and it is available as an option at the time of ordering your truck. And one other thing to point out, in the back of the truck, we do have another little cover off to this side. So pulling that cover down reveals a little keyhole. And that's going to be for our emergency access key on the key fob. And we would literally just insert that key in, and that's to be able to unlock the spare tire that's actually strategically located just underneath the vehicle. We do have our backup camera there, and this specific one, so we do have our zone lighting. So our full 360 lighting, super useful at nighttime. We've got a little light there. We've got one for the bed. We've actually got one inside of the box itself. And then we've got a few along the side and even one in the front. So we can literally get some light all around us if we're working later on at night, loading a truck up, whatever the case may be. One of the great things about the truck is that we've got a power liftgate inside of some trim levels of the vehicle. So we can double press, look at this. Oh, down it goes. So we've got a power liftgate inside of some versions of the vehicle, and that's power down and power up. This is amazing. Up and down power. We can stop it partway if we wanted to. We can lower it back down, etc. Super simple there. Now, few things that are going to be new that were actually introduced in the 2021 model year, so I guess technically unchanged in the 22. We've got a little bottle opener along the side there. We've got our measurements along the back here as well. Now, not going to be standard, available optional in some of the trim levels, available standard in others, so optional versus standard, depending on how you have this thing configured. Along the bottom here, we've got a few clamps as well, so if we need to cut wood and things like that, we can easily do it. If you get the option for the tailgate step, just means we can get in and out of the box a little bit easier. Now, I'm 6 feet tall, so realistically, getting to things inside of the box and even hopping up inside the box, not necessarily a challenge for me. But if you're a little bit shorter, or even if you want to just make things a little bit easier, you're a little bit older, whatever the case may be, just to make things easier to get into the bed, get the tailgate step from the factory. And it's super simple. We can literally just button press there, pull the step down. We've got a little thing along the side here, so we're just going to follow the yellow up and over. And it's that simple because we can now crank ourselves up and easily get inside of the bed of the truck. So you've got a few different options that are available there. Like I said, I do recommend getting the tailgate step from the factory if you're going to be in and out of the bed constantly. It just makes it easier to get in and out, but it's going to be a matter of preference. If you're strictly going to be towing, not really using the bed of the truck otherwise, you could definitely skip this thing, but it's only a couple $100 to get it directly from the factory. Now, this specific F-150 does have the spray-in bed liner that's available from the factory. And we technically do have a few options from the factory that are available. We could look at this spray-in bed liner. We know it's from the factory because we've got the Ford logo along the back of the bed there. Or we could get a drop-in plastic one right from the factory there as well. Now, which version of this you go with, so the actual bed liner, is going to be dependent on you. If you're never really going to use the bed of the truck, you could just skip it. If you're going to be using it for like construction work, so gravel, sand, rocks, things like that, you might want to look at the one with the plastic liner instead, because it does make it a little bit easier to sweep things off and clean this thing out. Drop-in plastic bed liner, I mean, it is nice because it's a little bit cheaper, it's easier to clean, whatever the case may be. If you're contemplating the spray-in bedliner, you do have a few different options that are available. Like I said, you could technically go for the spray-in directly from the factory, but there are some aftermarket solutions, and one of my favorite is through a company called Linex. And the reason why I love it, especially in comparison to the factory liner, it's about twice as thick, and the aftermarket Linex also has a lifetime warranty. So which way you go is ultimately going to depend on you. If you want to save a little bit of time and make sure that you know you're going to get your truck sooner, just do it aftermarket instead. Now, inside of the SuperCrew configuration, so the one with the full 4 doors, we've either got the option for a 5.5 or 6.5 foot box. When we get into the Super Cab, so the 2 full doors, 2 half doors that swing the opposite way, that's when we get into either the 6.5 or the 8 foot box. And then the regular cab, so that 2 full door, is going to be the same. So it's either going to be a 6.5 or an 8 foot box instead. One other thing, this specific truck, as we can see here, is the FX4. So it's the off-road package, which gives us unique tires, but it does quite a few other things rather than just slapping some decals on the side of the truck. So if we look at the FX4 package in general, first thing, it requires a 4x4, because the truck itself technically could be available as a 4x2, which gives us that rear-wheel drive versus the 4x4 instead. So looking at the FX4 package specifically, like I said, we do have to have at least a 4x4, and we've got a few different options for the actual final drive ratio. So we can get that in the 331, 355, or the 373. So we've got some flexibility there. But what happens with the FX4 package is what's going on with things that we can't see. So if we take a peek underneath the vehicle, we do have a series of different skid plates that are going to be available. Inside, we've got an extra drive mode, and that's going to be the rock crawl mode as well. So that's going to give us a little bit more aggressive performance when we're actually doing off-roading. So if we're doing some rugged off-roading, you want to definitely make sure you get that FX4 package. Now, a few other things specifically to do with the springs. So when we look at the springs in the front of the vehicle, that's going to be an off-road tuned front shock absorber, which means that, like I said, it's going to be tuned slightly more aggressively, specifically for those off-roading type of scenarios. And we've got monotube inside of the rear. So the monotube ones are actually interesting, but taking a peek at what those things look like, the monotube uses a free piston for more precise, stable, and continuous damping, which means that, again, better off-road performance. So if you're going to be taking your truck off-road, that's when you're really going to want to get the FX4 package. But it's interesting, I talk to people all the time, and when they're talking about trucks, everybody wants the FX4, the FX4, the FX4, without really noting what that package actually does. So it changes the entire dynamic of the ride itself. So if you're not doing any sort of off-roading whatsoever, you don't want the FX4 package. But if you're going to be taking your truck off-road, specifically on like rugged terrain, so you're doing more rock crawling, you need to take your bikes or ATVs and things like that places, the FX4 might be a better buy. One of the downsides of the FX4 package with that higher rear axle ratio, it's going to negatively affect your fuel performance as well. It's going to positively affect how much you can tow, so it's all a balancing game. So what do you need to do with your truck? And that's why working with a Ford professional is so important. And there are quite a few different options that are available for the vehicle when it comes down to the engine. So the Lariat is going to have the 2.7 liter EcoBoost engine as a default. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a good amount of power for the engine size in the vehicle itself. Obviously, if you're needing to pull more, you want more power, you've got either the 5 liter V8, or you could look at one of the new 3.5 EcoBoosts. So I should say the new 3.5. It's, I guess technically, it was reworked in 2021, so it had even more horsepower and torque than the previous year. And then there's also the Power Boost, so the full hybrid version of the vehicle. And then on top of that, you've also got the new Lightning that's coming out as well. That's going to be probably mid to late 2022. Overall, comfort-wise, it's great. I've obviously got the ventilated seat going right now as well. And it's how do you complain? It's a nice, warm, toasty day, ventilated seats, leather seats as well, which are oh so nice. It's got some pickup. It's ironic. The pickup's got some pickup. It's got good acceleration is where I was going with that one. It's nice. The 2.7, I think for the majority of people, if you've got just some small toys, you've got a small boat, or you're going to be pulling light things, I think that this would be a good option for most people. I guess the one question you want to ask yourself, though, is the potential resale value. Because at the end of the day, I know a lot of guys in construction, and what they do is they buy used trucks, and they specifically look for ones with more towing power and things like that as well. So if you're going to just buy the truck to have for a couple of years, resell it, upgrade, whatever the case may be, the more powerful engines like the 5 liter V8 or the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, they have fantastic resale values. They just do. I noticed that the 4x4 rather than the 4x2 also has a better trade-in value as well and a better after-sale value. So if you're just going to be hanging on to it for a couple of years, maybe sell it at the 150,000 kilometer or 100,000 mile mark, whatever the case may be, you might want to look at something where it's got features that people typically look for. So the tow package at a minimum is definitely something people look for. The XLT and the Lariat trim levels typically are the more popular selling ones, like the XLT 302A specifically, most popular selling F150. So, I mean, and even in the truck market right now, like it's actually kind of ridiculous. Like I've got a buddy who had a 2016 F150, I think it was. He went to go trade it in like a year ago. Well, he was originally going to do something with it, and they appraised the vehicle. At the time, it had, I think, like 60,000 kilometers on it, 4x4. It had, I think it was literally like, I think it was like 36,000 that he got the trade-in value for. But then he waited a year because he wanted to wait for the 2021 F150 to come up. So he was looking at the 21 F150. The trade-in value a year later with 20,000 kilometers more was like 38,000 instead. So, I mean, it's just the way that the market is right now. There aren't a ton of trucks out here that are available. So, I mean, you're probably not going to get a huge discount on the truck as of right now, unfortunately. So if that's really what you're hoping for, there's a few things you could look at. Like Ford employee pricing didn't happen in 2021. If availability is like what it is now, probably not going to happen in 2022. But you've got X-Plan pricing as an option. So certain companies have pre-negotiated discounts with Ford. You might luck out and you might have a dealer willing to give you a little bit of a discount on a truck as well. Some high volume dealers might do it. It's just the comfort and like just being in a truck in general. Like you just feel like a boss in this thing. Like you're high, obviously like much higher up off the ground than what you might be used to in, you know, like an SUV or a car. And just overall it's so comfortable, so comfy. Just gonna take a nap, take a quick nap, like a 2-minute nap. In 3, 2, and let's go for it. Okay, and giving it a little bit of gas. That is nice. Oh, that's nice. And that's the 3.5. That's, or so this is the 2.7. This is the 2.7, and it's handling that well. Oh, I love it. But like obviously a few things, like there's nothing in this truck right now. Like I've got nothing in the bed of the truck. Like payload is just me and my gear, so there's not too much weight-wise in this thing. That was a look at the 2022 Ford F-150. What did you think? I said, looking at the 21 versus the 22, not a ton of options with the exception of that black appearance package, which I love the fact that Ford has brought that back for this model year. But if you have any questions or ran into any problems, you need some clarification on towing capacities, payload, and things like that, drop down in the comments section below and let me know. More than willing to talk you through any usage you might be having. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your social networks. And until I see you next time, take care. Maybe it was a part constraint. On the other side of it, if you wanted something a little bit more fully loaded, look at the Limited or the Platinum. But on the other side of it, if you wanted something a little bit more loaded, you could look at either the Platinum or the highest trimmer. Oh, for f***'s sakes. And this, kids, is why we don't just use regular glue to try to hold together expensive electronics. It doesn't work. Oh, that's hilarious. That's probably going to fall again. Oh, down it goes. Oh well.